How's it going, guys? I hope you guys had a good weekend. We're getting back into it with more videos, and we're going to go through several articles as you see I have queued up here about all these amazing coincidences. And the short of it is that there's so many coincidences, 3 parentheses on each side, coincidences, that Antifa is doing all of the things that it is doing, and yet the media is absolutely silent about it. I wonder why. Let's put on our big brain hats and try to figure out why they are so silent on Antifa doing all of these terrorist activities in the US. You know, a kid with a MAGA hat stares at a Native American, and it is national news for literally weeks and weeks and weeks of nonstop 24/7 coverage of how this is Trump enforced radicalization of he's calling violence, his smile, his smirking was violent, his standing there was violent. This is an example of right-wingers being violent and terroristy, whatever. That, a grin can warrant that much rhetoric from the media, and Antifa does all these things I'm about to list, and they say jack shit about it. Absolutely, positively nothing. So let's go with the first one. A 4th ICE facility has been attacked. This is a month old, but it's still relevant. 4 federal government facilities have been attacked by Antifa. And what are the media saying about it? Are they saying that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez rhetoric is furthering this violence against the government? This specific website is, this random website that is small as fuck. But are you going to see New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, Yahoo, like any of those big mainstream media say what this small media outlet is going to say about it? No, absolutely not. They are saying absolutely nothing about it. The vast majority, first of all, the vast majority of Americans don't even know what Antifa is. And if they know something about it, it's like, oh, it's those guys who fight Trump supporters. It's those guys who are so brave and they fight fascists and they fight radical Trump supporters, who are committing acts of violence in the streets. Like, that's the only thing I know about it. It's like, it's actually exactly the opposite. But let's go into it. Democrats' rhetoric on ICE has come under increasingly scrutiny following attacks across the United States against facilities associated with the agency. The latest attack came early Tuesday morning when armed perpetrators shot at ICE offices in San Antonio, Texas, in which FBI has described as a targeted attack. Though no one was injured, FBI agent Christopher Combs said in a news conference, "Had bullets gone 2 inches in another direction, we could be here talking today about the murder of a federal official." The number of perpetrators, their identity, their motives are all currently unknown. Okay, so let's go into the first paragraph, shall we? Can you imagine for a split second if Trump supporters did the exact same thing? If Trump supporters shot up a federal office that right-wingers don't like, I don't know, the Federal Reserve, or, I don't know, some tax collector office, or some Democrat's office, something like that. Can you imagine the media firestorm? Holy shit, they would be nonstop talking about this for literally months. One right-winger kills 1 person in Charlottesville, Virginia 2 years ago, and they still never shut up about it. They go on and on and on and on and on about this one person who killed this one person, and he happened to be a Trump supporter, and so they point to this as this is an example of Trump inciting violence. Yet when this happens, they say absolutely nothing about the media and far leftist politicians perpetrating violence against the government, against innocent people, as getting people in a media frenzy by calling ICE facilities concentration camps. They brainwash these poor Antifa losers into thinking that we are literally running concentration camps, and that gets them all into a frenzy, and they shoot up federal buildings. Can you imagine if it was the other way around? But when it's the left doing it, they say absolutely, positively nothing about it. And what a coincidence that the number of perpetrators, identity, and their motives are all currently unknown. Nope, they just happen to not collect any information. What a coincidence. 3 parentheses coincidence. When it's their side doing it, suddenly they are just totally inept, and they can just never find anything about anyone. Same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, what a coincidence. Oh, we just have no idea how it happened. We have no idea why the guards were tired and they were new guards. They weren't the guards supposed to be there. The camera just happened to malfunction. All these switcheroos with his cellmates at the last minute for no reason. We'll just never know. Oh, darn. According to Combs, however, all of the fired shots were directed at floors of the office complex, allotted to ICE, indicating that the perpetrators had done research beforehand. The timing of the attack also suggests it may be intended to intimidate rather to harm ICE employees. It doesn't really matter. You're still shooting up a federal building for absolutely no reason. Like, let's hypothetically say that ICE was actually running concentration camps and the government was actually fascist, which it's not, and it was actually like rounding up people and killing them like 1984 style. It would be perfectly legitimate for people to shoot up offices and revolt against the government with arms. Absolutely, positively, I'm going on record saying that. I've been consistent with my principles from the very beginning. But this is not that situation. It's exactly the opposite. ICE is rounding up criminals, murderers, rapists, thieves, muggers, burglars, who are committing crimes against the American people, ruining thousands of people's lives by murdering them, raping them, stealing their stuff. And people think that's bad. That is exactly the opposite of rounding up like political dissenters and mass killing them, you know, like, I don't know, in Pol Pot did, for example. It's completely the opposite. But the media and the far-left politicians have brainwashed so many Americans that they actually can't tell the difference between Trump and ICE and Pol Pot and a socialist regime in Vietnam. Actually, I think Pol Pot was socialist. Oh, let me do my research so I won't wrongly attribute it. He was a dictator. Was Pol Pot communist? Yes, he was. Okay. Just want to make sure I was correct and everything. This incident is only the most recent entry, so it's not just isolated, in a growing list of direct actions against immigration enforcement officials. A similar attack occurred on July 14th when a man associated with Antifa, again, attempted to assault an ICE facility, a ICE detention center in Tacoma, Washington, while armed with a rifle and incendiary devices, and was shot by police. This episode came just a day after a mob of protesters descended on an ICE facility in Aurora, Colorado, pulled down an American flag, and raised a Mexican one in its place. Wow, that's really transparent. Some Americans, they are. Like Mexican government is any better than Americans, you fucking kidding me? Then on July 16th, ICE headquarters in D.C. was the site of a large protest with 10 people were arrested for unlawfully entering the building. Again, I know I've said this like 3 times already. Can you imagine if it was the other way around? Can you imagine if Trump supporters were storming Planned Parenthood after a protest and unlawfully entering the building and creating a ruckus? Can you imagine neo-Nazis, for example, charging into some Democratic headquarters, pulling down the American flag and raising a neo-Nazi sign? Can you just imagine if it was the other way around, like the exact same action, just the identities of the perpetrators were different? Can you imagine how the media will respond differently? But no, since it's their side doing it, they do absolutely, positively nothing. All they talk about is right-wing terrorism, right-wing violence, right-wing rhetoric, blah, 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 blah. Now, while the right does do some political violence, I'm not saying they're completely innocent in that. No, absolutely not. I will never say that. I will never say that one side's innocent and the other side does all the bad stuff. But I just don't see Trump supporters doing these things. I don't see the KKK doing these actions. People are crying hysterically about how the KKK is on the rise. What are they doing? They are so small and insignificant. They are so weak politically and manpower-wise and everything. They are doing nothing. They're not killing a single person. They're not storming federal buildings. They're not burning crosses in front of black people's homes or anything like that. They are so insignificant. And the media coverage on the small amount of KKK members that are present, and you flip that with the 4 terrorist attacks that Antifa has done this year alone within the last, I think this is all in July and August. Within 2 months, they've done 4 terrorist attacks. The media has said absolutely nothing. Isn't that just amazing? Isn't that just the biggest coincidence. I wonder why that's happening. It's not like the media is in cahoots with these far left groups, and then they push a narrative that is totally one-sided and blatant and not pertinent to reality whatsoever. And it's not like it's creating a false reality. It's brainwashing millions of people into believing things that don't exist. I mean, that can't be it, can it? Oh, that's just a conspiracy theory, Robert. You have no idea what you're talking about. You better listen to Alex Jones again and turn on Fox News, with all your fake news. That's why you believe that shit. But it's all right here. This is New York Times, Yahoo News, Southern Poverty Law Center, Daily Caller, New York Post. I'm getting all this information from. I'm not. Do you see Breitbart or Fox News in any of my tabs? Nope, not a single one. Ah, what a coincidence. It has been fashionable again in the aftermath of the mass shooting by a white supremacist in El Paso, Texas, to ascribe blame for political violence to Trump and his allies. The knife cuts both ways. The national conversation had been awash with talks of concentration camp ever since members of the insufferable squad were elected to Congress, transforming a comparatively sedate status quo on immigration into hysterics about fascism and genocide. No doubt some of the ICE employees targeted by these attacks with the agency since the Bush presidency or the Obama era, where record numbers of immigrants were deported and children are kept in cages. Yet it is only now, with Trump being president, what a coincidence, coincidence, that the life and limb of public servants are threatened and being compared to Nazi camp guards by elected officials on Capitol Hill. None of that's an exaggeration whatsoever. Bush does the status quo with deporting illegal immigrants and keeping children away from their families until they figure out if they're being child trafficked or not. Obama does the exact same thing. In fact, he deported way more people than Bush or Trump ever did. The media and leftists were silent over all these 16 years of those two presidencies. As soon as Trump does the exact same thing, they just burst out into hysteria. What a coincidence. Okay, so we're done with that article. Let's go on to the next article. Antifa and far-right groups face off in Portland as Trump weighs in. Conservative groups are urging the United States to label Antifa a domestic terrorist group. President Trump said the city was being watched very closely. Oh, I can't read it because the New York Times is a failing media organization. Its legacy media was failing, and the subscribers are dropping by the hundreds of, no, more than that. Jesus, that's nothing. Dropping by the thousands, if not the millions, and they have to go behind a paywall. Well, okay, we have other articles. Antifa members have repeatedly attacked journalists who cover them. So these Antifa members, they attack federal government buildings. They attack journalists who simply report on their violent attacks. How is that not a terrorist organization? Can you imagine if Trump supporters did that? Can you fucking imagine for 1 second? Members of the violent left-wing movement Antifa have repeatedly harassed and attacked members of the media who cover them. Masked individuals at an Antifa rally Saturday violently attacked Portland journalist Andy No, sending him to the hospital. This is like 3 months old. 2 months old. This is not new news by any means. I'm just showing you a comprehensive list of everything the Antifa is doing this year alone. They've been active ever since Trump got inaugurated. They attacked people in the streets in D.C. when he got inaugurated 2.5 years ago. They've been doing shit for 2.5 years. This is just what they're doing this year. While some members of national media, including CNN host Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, who really should just dump their spouses and boyfriend in case of Don Lemon, I don't know if he's married, and just hook up because they are so gay on television. They just suck each other's dick on television constantly. It's like, I'm going to say something really retarded. Yep, I completely agree. That retarded thing is completely correct. Jesus. Have been sympathetic towards Antifa in the past, that hasn't kept Antifa members from attacking journalists actually covering them on the ground. The U.S. Press Freedom Tracker collaboration, led by the Freedom of the Press Foundation and the Committee to Protect Journalists, includes numerous incidents of anti-fascist agitators harassing and assaulting journalists since Trump took office. Protesters at an Antifa rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, harassed and attacked an NBC crew in August 2018. NBC reporter Cal Perry tweeted out a video of the attack. But where are the Trump supporters? Where are they attacking journalists? Oh, They're not. Where are these neo-Nazis attacking journalists to silence any filming of them and filming any of their illegal activities or their assaults? Or where's any of that happening? Where's the KKK people attacking journalists in the South or anywhere in the country for that matter? Where's any of this happening? Oh, it's not. Oh, it's only one way. Or, to be fair, the KKK or neo-Nazis might have done it a couple of times in isolated instances, but not on the scale that the left is doing it. That's what I'm saying. That's what the first article said. The knife cuts both ways. Yes, there are right-wingers who commit violent acts of terrorism, no doubt. Never going to deny that. Don't take my words out of context and comment on this article. Are you saying that the right wing never does anything bad? No, absolutely not. No, don't put words in my mouth. Actually, listen to the video before commenting, please. All I'm saying is that when the right does it, the media blows it up into a huge proportion and talk about it for months and months and months and act like it's this huge problem. When the left does it way more often, they say absolutely nothing about it. The same day of Perry's attack, Antifa members in the nation's capital harassed reporters in another rally. Antifa members in Berkeley, California attacked a local news reporter in August 2017. Journalist Mike Kessler described watching Antifa members attack another photographer in the same Berkeley rally. Well, we saw a photographer, a white guy, 30-something, pink shorts, of course. Of course he's wearing pink shorts. Black t-shirt, media affiliation, if any, still unknown, taking blows to the head while cradling his camera like a football, recover post-fumble. Evidently, he captured something that Antifa didn't want him to document. They wanted to destroy the evidence and he wasn't going to hand it over. Why? Why isn't the media talking about their fellow journalists being attacked by these radical left-wing terrorists? They just don't talk about it, ever. That same month, another Antifa member struck a Richmond photojournalist in the head with a blunt object, forcing him to get stitches. January 2017, a Chicago Sun-Times reporter was attacked by left-wing agitators. How many times? That's just one article talking about a couple of times in 2017, 2018. How many times does that have to happen before, like, okay, I think there's a serious problem with these left-wing terrorists. They've attacked federal facilities 4 times in 2 months. They have attacked journalists multiple times within a 2-year period. Oh, but wait, there's more. Liberals are cheering this, while right-wingers condemn the terrorism done in their name and done on their side of the aisle. You cannot find a single right-winger who did not condemn the El Paso shooter, for example. Every single right-wing politician, every single Trump supporter condemned him, as that is wrong. We condemn that. That is not our ideology. We do not support that, etc., etc. Liberals, on the other hand, are cheering as Antifa violence escalates. Again, we're not saying that right-wingers don't commit political violence. What we're saying is, when they do it, their politicians condemn it. When the liberal politicians do it way more often, they cheer it. You can read the whole article for yourself. I'm not going to read the entire thing. The worst part is how prominent media figures and politicians glamorize and even promote Antifa as a movement for a just cause. These are prominent media figures who literally have millions upon millions of people watching them every single day. This is not some fringe radical leftist that has like 3 followers on Twitter that no one cares about, that no one's following. That's not the problem. When radicals on either side, who are completely on the fringe as far as the political dialogue is concerned, it doesn't matter if they promote violence, because no one's paying attention to them, no one's following their ideology, no one's committing violence in their name. But that's not the case here. CNN's Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon, and faggots, have defended Antifa on air. Chuck Todd invited Antifa ideologue Mark Bray on Meet the Press to explain why Antifa's political violence is ethical. Keith Ellison gleefully posted, and recently deleted, what a surprise, a selfie of himself holding Bray's Antifa handbook. Rep. Maxine Waters met hard left political operative Joseph Akoff in 2016. He's facing felony charges for his alleged involvement in Antifa mob beatings of 2 Marines in Philadelphia. That last choice of targets Marines was no accident. Antifa operates by a very broad definition of fascists. Their definition of fascist is everyone who doesn't agree with them, which is like 99.9% of the population, which is why they attack every single person they can find down the street that's not Antifa. There have been times that Antifa's beating up people, and they're raiding people who are not part of the Proud Boys or Trump organization at all, who are just on the street going from one place to another. Antifa beats the shit out of them for no reason. Except the only reason is that they're not in Antifa with them in black hoods and black ski masks right now. That's the only reason. Like, are you fucking kidding me? But they save most of their hatred for U.S. law enforcement and military service members. Antifa goal is violent political revolution, and it sees law enforcement officers and the military as main obstacles. In the Pacific Northwest, where Antifa is especially active, the group has continuously targeted ICE. This is talking about the stuff we talked in the first article. Last summer, the local ICE building in Portland faced a 5-week siege that shut down the facility. Why? Antifa seeks to destabilize and destroy the nation-state by attacking its sovereign borders. And the group draws morale for mainstream progressive politicians, such as Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who normalize hatred of border enforcement and sovereignty as such. Okay, let's keep going. So not only is Antifa attacking federal government buildings, attacking journalists who criticize them, attacking anyone they find on the streets who doesn't agree with them, now they are arming themselves. Now this long article goes into a bunch of crap that we don't care about, but the pertinent part is way down here. Corey Lemley, a self-described anti-fascist activist in Tennessee whose Twitter activity was included in the FBI report, said he knew he was on the government's radar because he was previously visited by federal authorities at his home after he helped organize counter-protests against neo-Nazi rallies in Tennessee last year. Odds are those neo-Nazi rallies were not neo-Nazis at all. They were just free speech advocates, excuse me, or Trump supporters. They describe anyone who doesn't agree with them as neo-Nazi, so you can't take that as face value. He also pointed to the government's record of surveilling activists, blah, 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 blah. Okay, FBI Phoenix assesses that anarchist extremists are very likely increasing the target of U.S. government law enforcement personnel and facilities along the Arizona border, increasing the risk of armed conflict. FBI Phoenix also assessed that Arizona-based AEs likely are increasingly arming themselves and using lethal force to further their goals in confrontation with ideologically opposed groups, where ideologically opposed groups is literally everyone else on the planet. That's how far left they are. Everyone to them is a neo-Nazi. Everyone to them is an ideologically opposed group. Everyone to them is a fascist, except themselves. This is a post from the Corey Lemley guy putting guns on his Facebook page. While I don't... of course, he has the freedom of speech to post pictures of Facebook with guns. That's absolutely no problem at all. He's free to do that. In fact, I support that 100%. The problem is that it's cited with a tweet saying that every ICE detention facility shall be taken over with ICE employees detained until every immigrant is freed. Lemley, who was 28, told Yahoo News that his tweet was not meant to be a threat and he's not advocate proactive violence. But yet, the groups that he is a part of are arming themselves, increasingly targeting U.S. government law enforcement personnel. They are using lethal force to further their goals, increasing the risk of armed conflict and confrontation with ideologically opposed groups. So how else can you take that? If you post a picture of yourself holding a gun saying we should take over federal government buildings, detain the federal employees, and increasingly the risk of armed conflict, and we're arming ourselves, and we're going to use lethal force, how else can you take that but a threat? Are you kidding me? Can you imagine, again, if it was the other way around, if a Trump supporter posted a picture of himself holding a gun saying we should take over the Democratic politician offices in Rayburn and the other offices, in D.C., we should detain them and use lethal force to increase the risk of armed conflict. Can you imagine the media firestorm if any Trump supporter did that? But they don't. And yet when Antifa people do this, he is by far not the only one. They say absolutely, positively nothing about this. The resistance is going to take many shapes and many different forms. Right now, we do not have plans to have an armed rebellion or armed resistance against the state. Then why are you holding a gun, dude? Like, I'm all for posting pictures of guns. That's totally within your Second Amendment rights to have that gun and First Amendment right to post it. Why are you posting it saying that we're going to take over federal government buildings? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, what else? How else is they supposed to interpret it other than a threat? And now we're going to our last article. Hate groups reach record high, including Antifa. But the most amazing thing about this article, again, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but look how they manipulate data and they write things that don't correlate with the data. The vast majority of hate groups, including neo-Nazis, Ku Klux Klan, racist skinheads, neo-Confederates, white nationalists, they have surged by 50%, from 100 to 148. Remember that number, 148. So they're saying that the vast majority is 148. So 148 is more than 50% of the hate groups, according to this article. But yet in the next paragraph, they contradict themselves. But in an equal yet opposite reaction, black nationalist groups also expanded their ranks from 233 to 264. How is 148 right-wing groups the vast majority, yet 264 of black nationalists is not the majority? Are you fucking kidding me? This is why Southern Poverty Law Center is a fucking joke. It is an extremist organization that just puts blatant propaganda. All the left-wing people are going to see is this part right here. That's all they're going to read, because it adheres to the confirmation bias. They're going to see, oh, look at this surge during the Trump presidency. It jumped from 100 to 148. It's the vast majority of hate groups. But what's this? And can we just have another point here? Black people are 13% of the population. Whites, I believe, are like 63%. They're in the 60s, if I remember correctly. Are you telling me that 13% of the population has 264 groups, and 63% of the population has only 148? That means that black hate groups are exponentially overrepresented. That means whites are extremely underrepresented in hate groups. Yet in the media, what do you hear about? White hate groups, Ku Klux Klan, white nationalists, skinhead, neo-Nazis, Richard Spencer, far-right, alt-right, white nationalism, Nick Fuentes. That's all you hear about constantly, day in and day in, day in and day in, day in and day out, constantly, nonstop, 24/7. Why are they spending 99.9% of the time they talk about hate groups about the 148 from 63% of the population when they talk about 1% of the 264 from 13% of the population? Why? Why? I wonder why. It's almost like they have an agenda. It's almost like they're not actually reporting on reality. It's almost like they are reporting on half-truths and only talking about one side of the story in order to brainwash people into believing something that doesn't actually exist. That thing that doesn't exist being that white people are the vast majority of hate groups and that they're the only ones that are hateful and racist. But by their own Southern Poverty Law Center's report, black nationalist groups are the vast majority of hate groups. They're typically anti-Semitic, anti-LGBT, and anti-white. You know, they keep on talking about how the rise of anti-Semitic attacks during Trump's presidency. Do you know the vast majority of people who commit anti-Semitic attacks? They're black people. They're not white people. They're not Nazis. They're black people. When have you ever heard mainstream media talk about that? And we'll end with this. This is amazing. Unlike white nationalist groups, however, they have virtually no supporters or no influence in mainstream politics, and much less the White House. That is absolutely exactly the opposite of what reality is. White nationalism has absolutely no support in mainstream politics. They have no support in the White House at all. White nationalists bemoan Trump for not pushing their ideology, for pushing their agenda. They hate Trump. They think Trump stabbed them in the back. They are not going to vote for Trump in 2020. How can you possibly say that? Find one nationalist mainstream politician in the Republicans. Find a single one. You can't. Every single Republican politician condemns white nationalism. They have absolutely no support and influence in mainstream politics. But you know who does have a whopping amount of support and influence in mainstream politics. Antifa does. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is one of the most popular representatives. She constantly supports Antifa. She constantly bemoans ICE, calling them Nazis and running concentration camps. This is what mainstream political support looks like. This is what it looks like, as what she said in that stupid speech. She's trying to act like a black person. Are you kidding me? How can you possibly say this sentence? It's exactly the opposite. Anti-white sentiment is rampant in mainstream politicians. Every single day I hear from CNN and mainstream Democrats how they hate white people to blame for everything, white men are the devil, they are the only people who are racist, they have structural white supremacy, we live in a white supremacy state, they have patriarchy, we live in a white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, just day in and day out, constantly. Mainstream politics is anti-white, is pro-black, black nationalism. So there it is. There is a half hour, more or less, of all of these articles that just paint an amazing picture of the clown world we live in. And how the vast majority of Americans have absolutely no idea that any of this stuff I'm talking about is ever going on.